Yeah, money or blackmail. I don't know, something that doesn't add up. Or maybe it is just a sentiment thing. He's 70 years old. People in America, I think, have been raised since World War II. We've all had a very soft sentiment about the Holocaust, the atrocities that happened. We want to help the Jewish people. We feel for the Jewish people, right? There's definitely an empathetic, um, I think, feeling amongst Americans that perhaps has worn off now with this younger generation that didn't, like it was my grandfather who fought in World War II, and I'm in my mid 40s now. So these young people, they never met anybody who fought in World War II. They're just too young. They weren't hearing the war stories. They weren't hearing, seeing the hero parades and all of this stuff. So what do you think it is that has caused the young people to really now say, we don't support this? I mean, you guys and all your other generations continue to just turn a blind eye to this, but we're not.
Well, I think before your parents were born, I was around, and I was subjected to intense propaganda, which I believed. I was a great fan of Israel, and partly as a result of things like Leon Uris writing Exodus, and wonderful movie with all sorts of great actors from Hollywood in it. We all felt very positive about Israel. And as you said, we had sympathy for Israelis as refugees from the Holocaust in Europe. Of course, the Arabs didn't perpetrate the Holocaust,
Right.
but that's neither here nor there, I suppose. Now Israel has perpetrated a Holocaust, and that's the answer to your question. Kids may not, they've had a lifetime full of movies about the Holocaust, because Hollywood definitely likes to turn those out. Some of them excellent movies.
Yeah.
But now they're seeing this live. They're seeing the equivalent of Auschwitz live. And they're seeing the President of the United States say things like, well, let's get a temporary ceasefire, which is a bit like saying to someone in Auschwitz, here, have a drink of Kool-Aid before you go to the gas chamber.
Yeah.
It's not responsive to the problem. What is the problem? Here, I think everybody is dancing around the fundamental truth, which is this is not a war between Israel and Hamas. It's a war by Israel on Palestinian self-determination. And Hamas carries that banner. And yet we hear people say, well, it's totally unacceptable for Hamas to be in charge in Gaza or anywhere else. Well, the last election that was held, they won. And the polls show that despite a lot of misgivings about some of their behavior, and maybe their decision to go over the wall on October 7th last year, they're still very popular. So, this is a reminder of how the State of Israel began, which was in an orgy of terrorism. The leaders of Israel are all terrorists. And of course, if you win independence, then you're a founding father. You're not a terrorist anymore.
Right.
If you lose, you're still a terrorist. So I think we need a fundamental rethinking of all this.
Yeah.
We can't go on. And by the way, it isn't just Israel that's paid a huge price for all this. The Israeli economy is tanked. Israel is divided probably more than it ever has been. People whose relatives, husbands, wives, children are hostages, who may or may not be alive in the tunnels in Gaza, want their relatives back. And Netanyahu clearly prefers to go on with the war, and he's made that clear on many occasions. So you have great demonstrations in Israel. Of course, we did even before this because of Netanyahu's effort to escape prison by depriving the courts of independence. But in any event, Israel has paid a huge price. Israel is now a pariah state. Other countries are breaking relations with it, or saying they won't admit Israeli tourists anymore, and so forth and so on. But we're so closely identified by our own choice with Israel that this has spilled over on us.
Yeah.
You ask people in the Middle East now, there was a poll just out Who do you trust the most? Answer: Vladimir Putin, number one. Xi Jinping, number two. What about Joe Biden? 23% say they trust him. So we have taken a huge hit in terms of our international influence and our appeal. And this is not going to go away easily, because one thing that we all learn in life is if you forfeit the trust of other people, it's very, very hard to get it back.
Yeah.
And we have lost the trust of the world. Now we have Republicans in the House, who joined by some Democrats, proposing to put sanctions on the justices of the International Criminal Court. So much for the rule of law, so much for our tradition of respect for the rule of law. To his credit, Mr. Biden, or somebody, whoever's really running the government at the moment, has said he opposes that. That's good. But we have a mob that is posturing politically on this issue in a way that is enormously destructive of everything we've tried to stand for 2.5 centuries.
Yeah. And if Trump gets into office, I mean, he was one who also went hard against the ICC, definitely was kind of in that mob. And so I think if he becomes president again, we'll see that erosion once again towards that, that government.
There is a connection between scofflaw behavior abroad and scofflaw behavior at home. One of the things that we've lost, apparently, I hope it's not totally gone and we can recover it, is a respect for due process. What is that? That is the sense that if the process of adjudication is fair, the outcome is just, or it is at least legitimate, even if you think it is unjust. Yeah. And you have to accept it. We have now, Mr. Trump exemplifies this, prominent people in our society who say, the courts be damned. It's all rigged. I'm not going to obey a court order. I'm not going to subject myself to whatever decision has been made by the American voters. Who are they to tell me that I shouldn't be in office? Yeah. And so forth and so on. So we have disrespect for the rule of law and due process, and it is not limited to the international arena by any means.
Right. So much that I want to ask you. I want to get into this idea that this is all the Palestinians' fault. That the Israelis have put forward peace agreement after peace agreement after peace agreement, and it's been the Palestinians who, time and time again, have just ruined these agreements, crossed the line. They end the ceasefires. It's all their fault. We tried. We did everything we could. It's their fault. Can you kind of go over some of that? What do you think was the reason why the Palestinians didn't accept previous peace negotiations, or why do you think things fell apart?
Israel has never put forward a peace proposal. It has never accepted the idea of Palestinian self-determination. It has never accepted the two-state solution. It has never accepted the idea of one state in which everybody would have a vote. It has never accepted its own borders. It keeps expanding them. It has never accepted the right of Palestinians to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, let alone their property. We have put forward such suggestions on occasion in what I would argue is a disastrously pro-Israeli manner, such that we're basically asking the Palestinians to accept eternal subjugation or exile from their country. And that is the Israeli demand. So now, what was the purpose? What is the purpose of killing probably 46,000 people, because there are at least 10,000 under the rubble in Gaza? What is the purpose of running pogroms, burning villages, threatening people with death if they don't flee in the West Bank? The purpose is to rid Palestine of Palestinians. And by the way, the slogan from the river to the sea, which for some reason or other in our country has become a symbol of Palestinian intransigence is actually part of the Likud Party charter. That is a Zionist phrase, meaning Israel has to control everything from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean, and to do so while denying that there is any such thing as Palestinians. They're just, I don't know where they came from. They just happen to be here.
Right.
Get rid of them. Ironically, of course, genetically, they are the descendants of the original inhabitants of that area, including the Jews. They converted first to Christianity under the Byzantines and then to Islam when Islam exploded out of the Arabian Peninsula. And why did they do that? They didn't do it at the sword, because both the Byzantines and the Arabs were clever enough to have tax policies that favored people who were Muslim or Christian before that. And it turns out tax policy actually can influence your identity and your beliefs, and you can change religions in order to get a deal. I can't imagine there's anybody in our politics who would do that, but I'm being facetious, of course. But why did this? Now let's go back to October 7th. I think the best analogy that I've heard was by Norman Finkelstein. He likened this to the revolt of Nat Turner, a well-educated, very bright slave in the 1830s who led a revolt by other slaves in Southern Virginia. They came out of slavery, which was a brutal experience in which they had no rights whatsoever, in which they were ripped apart from each other at the will of their masters, murdered sometimes with impunity by their masters. And their program was to kill every white person they could find. And they killed about 60 white Americans, men, women, and children.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they suffered terrible retribution when they were rounded up and hanged, and other Black Americans were victimized. Gaza is an open-air prison or concentration camp. It is the largest concentration. It was before it was pulverized. It was the largest concentration camp in the world. And Hamas engineered an escape from it. Now, there's a moral question here. You can say this correctly that Nat Turner and his fellow slaves, in murdering people, were committing crimes, that they were committing sins. Yes, they were. But you should also weigh that against the sin of slavery and the crime of slavery. If between the two, who do you think deserves more sympathy, the master or the slave? And I apply that to this. I was after October 7th, of course, seeing the atrocities that accompanied the breakout from Gaza, one had to sympathize with the Israelis. And I think they had universal sympathy, even in the Muslim world. Nobody likes Hamas particularly, for different reasons. The Saudis don't like Hamas because it's a democratic movement. And it says we don't need kings, princes, generals, dictators, thugs to help us pursue our political agenda. We can do so at the ballot box. And they did. This is very threatening if you're a prince, a king, a dictator, or a thug, or a military man like General Sisi in Egypt. So they don't like the Hamas for that reason. Other people don't like Hamas for other reasons. The Israelis don't like Hamas, which they've successfully demonized, because it is the only effective armed opposition they face in Palestine.
Yeah.
And in fact, on October 7th, it showed itself to be surprisingly resourceful and capable militarily. Of course, it's a guerrilla force facing one of the most advanced, powerful militaries in the world. There was never any chance that anything would happen other than what has, namely the devastation of Gaza. So I'd say you have to remember there's a little history here. For 75 years, Palestinians have been murdered with impunity. There have been 3,000 assassinations of Palestinian leaders by Israeli security services, who then, rather like the kid who kills his parents and then says, "Take pity on me, I'm an orphan," they say, well, there's nobody to talk to. Well, why is there nobody to talk to? Because you killed everybody who was worth talking to, who had a following, who might have led a negotiation against you. So this business about Israel constantly wants peace. Israel has been offered peace by the United States in mediation on numerous occasions, always a choice of trading land for peace. They have always chosen land, not peace.
Yeah.
And they're still doing it.
And it seems like every negotiation or every agreement that has been put out there is really just an agreement to keep talking. I mean, it's just like the latest ceasefire deal. It's just an agreement to keep talking. We'll do a temporary ceasefire while we continue talking until we can maybe talk our way into a permanent ceasefire. And every single, like from the Oslo Accords, any time that they've ever been presented anything, it's always been well, we're going to just keep talking.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is the fantasy of the so-called peace process, a process that never produces peace.
Right.
But it is always an excuse for not making peace. So we say to the UN, oh, no, don't put pressure on Israel because, this has to be settled between Palestinians and Israel. Well, do the Palestinians hold any cards? Does the international community support them? Who has been the main interlocutor between Palestinians and Israelis? Us.
Yeah.
Where are we on this issue? We have been 100% with the Israelis. We still are. This latest so-called Israeli peace proposal, which isn't from Israel, it's an American proposal that we have imposed on Israel, which Netanyahu has basically rejected, and making it clear that it isn't an Israeli proposal. It may be a proposal that some Israelis agree with, but the criminal fascist gang that inhabits his cabinet, Ben Gvir and Smotrich and these people, have made it clear that if anything like this is agreed, they're going to destroy their government and go on the rampage.
Yeah.
So this is Joe Biden between a rock and a hard place, trying to wiggle out. And it's just exactly as you said. If it were ever implemented, which it won't be, Hamas has said they see positive things in it. Israel said they see negative things in it. It's not going to be implemented. If it ever were, it would lead to more of the same, because that's what Israel wants. They want more of the same. And that's the path of least resistance in American politics, given the brainwashing.
Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen show, which you could catch just by heading to that link down below, KimIversonShow.com. You can watch the full show from what you just watched, or you could catch the full show live Monday through Friday, live streams, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. See you then. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Never miss an episode. Never miss a clip. Never miss a segment. Thanks, guys.